Okay, so as I said, I'm Brian Gomez. I'm the Vice President of Operations for PastPerfect Software Company. I've been working with this company since the year 2000 when we were just a couple of years old. I'm the first employee for PastPerfect, and I've been around through all of this development. Thanks to our 8,400 museums out there, we are the world's leader in collections management and membership management software, and we only service the museum and cultural society community, and we want to thank you guys for choosing PastPerfect. Today's webinar is going to be all about setting up security in PastPerfect, and the first place I actually want to take you is to our website, museumsoftware.com. I'm already a couple of steps ahead here, so let me back up to museumsoftware.com. And you should see our website here with some links on the right-hand side, including one for the knowledge base. So as I click on this knowledge base button, it should take me into PastPerfect's knowledge base where I'm going to search for the keyword security. Type in security, hit the magnifying glass, and the article I want to bring your attention to is planning your security groups in PastPerfect. So if I click on that, it will bring up an article that has 2 file attachments to it. So again, that was from museumsoftware.com. Click on the knowledge base, keyword security, and then planning your groups. And down here in the bottom, there are 2 links. These are PDF links. I'm going to click on the first one and open it. This is Internet Explorer, so it's opening up. It's asking me the question if I want to open it or save it. This is what we're working toward. This is a PDF of 10, I'll try to enlarge it a little bit for you. It's 10 user groups. When we talk about PastPerfect Security, we're talking about 10 user groups. And we've named them. You can rename them, but the name really doesn't matter. User group number 1, administrator. User group 2, curator. You can see how I've lined them out here, 5 over 5. The administrator group is set as a default group that gets full access to the program. Now, that other attachment I didn't click on is a blank one of these sheets, and I wanted you to be able to print it out so that you could use it as well to write in whose names would fall under what groups, and then write in your goals for what that security group should or shouldn't be able to do. 10 groups, but an unlimited number of users. So if you have a staff of 100, you can divide them up as however you'd like, but you can't have more than 10 different groups of security settings. And when I say a group of security settings, that means everybody in that group gets the same security settings. So if you have 99 administrators, all 99 would have the same permissions. All right? So for this exercise, we're going to set up a couple of groups. One is the visitor group, another is the membership group, and we're going to work also in the curator group. The evaluation copy of the software is what we're going to be using to teach today. So you're going to see us using some things that are already pre-programmed in there, like Rick Hilton. His password is master. So if you're playing around with security in the eval and you get locked out, important to remember his security password is master. All right. So I'm going to close out of this screen here. If you take a look before I go, there's a section here for visitors, number 9. And I'm saying that I want to have a username of visitor and talk about very limited access. That's the goals I've kind of set up here for this group. So we may come back to this screen. So this is PastPerfect version 5. And in order to set up security, we need to go to Setup. Once I click on Setup, here at the top left, once I click on Setup, as I move down, there's a button for Security. Now, if you already have security set for PastPerfect, you might have to log in again, and you're going to see that here as we start playing around. But if you already have security set, you're going to need access, security access, to that security setting in order to make these changes. So on the left-hand side here are the areas of the program, whether we're talking about catalogs, reports and research, utilities, or setup, different areas of PastPerfect. And then to the right, you saw all these buttons changing here, the place where you can put in the check marks. That's going to restrict the different areas. But before we go there, take a look up here at the top. These are our groups 1 through 10, and right now we're on the administrators group. And if I take a look through catalogs, our activities, you'll notice the administrator isn't really restricted from doing anything. And that's one of the things we recommend, that you have an administrator and they have full access to do everything in the program. All right? Then we take a look down. Here's the Curator Group. Keep working our way down. And if I have the catalogs checked here, you might be able to see some check marks flying up as we move through them. I'm going to go all the way down to group number 9, which is my visitor group. So with this visitor group, you can see we've already started to fill in some of the check marks. What a check mark means is that the user who logs in as part of this group can't actually do the thing that is checked. So a visitor right now, the way PastPerfect is set up, cannot go into the object and click on the Edit button. But they can click on the Add button, which we probably want to stop them from doing. So in order to stop them from being able to add a visitor from adding their own objects, we put a check mark in the Add button. Another one there in Print, because I don't want them wasting my paper. Again, Add and Print, Add and Print. And we're doing this for all 4 catalogs. Now, also on these security screens, there's a button at a check mark at the top. If you don't want them in your objects catalog at all, you would put a check mark there, and that will lock them out of the objects completely. And we'll see that on a different screen. I do want my visitors to be able to look around inside of my PastPerfect program, but there are some areas that I don't want them to be in, things like membership, and we'll get there. While they're in the objects catalog, I don't want them to see appraisal information. So I'm going to put a check mark in appraisal information. I'd like them not to know the condition. Coming down a little bit further, I don't want them to know where those expensive items are stored. And I may not want them to see the notes or legal stuff. Further down, I may not want them to know where the item came from, so source. And I would do the same thing for photos, archives, and library. Now, I may miss a couple here as we're going through the class because I'm trying to do the clicking and speaking at the same time, and I'm not really good at doing both. So if I miss a few, recognize I'm just trying to go fast here. So source, appraisal, condition, location, location. All right, good enough. All right, so once we've got it set on this program area for the visitor, we can move down to the next one. And you'll see that I've already locked them out of temporary custody, accessions, exhibits, incoming loans, outgoing loans, and deaccession. They have check marks at the top header section, which means that the visitor can't get into any of those areas. We go down a little further to development. I don't want them in my contacts at all, so I'm putting a check mark up there. I don't want them to see our campaigns, how we're doing for fundraising. I don't want them modifying or going into my contact list, and I certainly don't want them to see my pledges and receipts. All right, you guys following along? Raise your hands if you're with me. Uh-oh. All right, there you go. Whew. Nobody raised their hand for a second there. I thought I was talking to the air. But wow, I got to do all that again? All right, great. Thanks for the feedback. You can go ahead and put your hands down if you'd like. So I've worked my way through putting check marks in the top of each one of these guys trying to say, no, the visitor can't get into that section. So that's development. If I go into research and reports, remember, we locked them out of the development section for contacts. Well, we also want to keep them from going in and generating reports about that information. So I don't think my visitor really needs any access to reports. So I'm going to lock them out of reports, report maker. I would like them to be able to do research, but maybe I want to limit that research and what they can do. I don't want them to be able to print the results. I don't want them to be able to export the results and take the results with them. I don't want them to be able to save their queries, create lists, or change results field lists. I don't want them to be able to change the view. But I do want them to be able to go into objects, archives, library, and photos to find the items that they're looking for. We can also stop them from modifying the report layouts and being able to see our catalog list. All right, moving down a little bit further. If you use sites, sites is an area of PastPerfect where we tend to keep track of the archaeological digs. Sites, we don't want them in at all. We don't want them to know where the stuff is being pulled from. People biographies, we may want them to be able to research their family members, but we don't want them to be able to add, edit, delete, or print the biographies for those people. Moving a little further down, going to optional features, we don't want them doing an inventory for us. We don't want them going on to PastPerfect Online and putting new records up on PastPerfect Online, and we don't want them creating virtual exhibits for themselves. This is all stuff that only the staff would ever do. Under General, there's some pretty neat features in here where we can set print and preview across the program for not allowing them to print or preview. So if you do have trouble keeping paper in your printer and your visitors seem to be using a lot of it, you can stop them from printing right there. May not want them to be changing your object IDs. Looking at websites, you might want to keep them locked into PastPerfect and not have them being able to access websites for like AAT Online or those other things that PastPerfect has hyperlinks for. You may not want them in your to-do list telling you what to do, and you may not want them to be able to see your Dublin Core records, so that when they decide that they want to export one of your records to Dublin Core, by having that check mark in there, they won't be able to do it. Keep them from going into multimedia. You may have your deed of gifts in multimedia or other appraisal information in multimedia. These are things like PDF records or something like that that might be attached to the catalog record that might talk about the appraisal or condition history. If you have that information as a multimedia link, you want to have that check mark in there to keep them out of it. If, on the other hand, you have great videos that you do want them to access as multimedia links, perhaps you just don't want them to add, edit, delete, or print those multimedia items. We may come back to this edit datasets part. It's actually a leftover of version 4, but it does still work. I may come back to it. So under utilities, in most cases, our visitors shouldn't be able to do any of these things. They shouldn't be able to go into backup. We don't want them doing global updates, restoring data. So I'm going to lock them totally out of utilities. And then under setup, I also don't want them coming in here to be able to change settings for PastPerfect. So I'm going to lock them out of setup as well. All right, so I set the permissions up for my visitors. And now when I look back at that sheet, let's see if I can call it up here for you. There you go. Visitor Group 9. The username that I want to use here is just visitor. And I'm going to use the same password for all of my people today, which is just going to be 1234. Easy to remember, and I won't mess it up. So how do we add a new user? So back here at the security screen, I'm in the group, the visitor group, where I want to add a new visitor. So I'm going to click on Add or Display User Group, and then Add User. Once I click on that Add User button, it asks me for a name. Now, for the most part, we want you to use last name, comma, space, first name. This password and this user and BizTour. All right, so spelling doesn't count. For this example, we're putting the visitor's name and password probably on a sticky note that stays on the computer so that people who are walking up to the computer to use PastPerfect don't have to bother us to get a password each time. I'm just going to use a simple 1234, but we do recommend using for people on staff or volunteers, people that are going to be using the software repeatedly, we do recommend using last name, comma, space, first name. That way, as they're making changes and that information about their changes is being stored in PastPerfect, it will be easily sorted. You won't have to be looking up all of the Barbers followed by all of the Bryans. Instead, we can do it by last name. All right, so I'm going to click on Add here, and now we have a visitor in group number 9. Now, I use the same name of the group as the same name as my my login. So you're going to see that it might be a little bit confusing, but I could have named this anything else, like researcher or whatever. All right, so I'm going to exit out of here, and this button down here for Activate Security, this is actually what turns PastPerfect Security on. When it says Activate Security, you click on it in order to make security activate. If it says Deactivate Security, you click on it to make security deactivate. So right now, security is activated, and if I close all the way out of the program, I'm going to get a security warning that says, hey, you've set up security. If you don't remember your password, you're not going to be able to get back in. Click on OK and close the program now. Now, PastPerfect is closed, and I need to get back to my desktop here. I've got my PastPerfect evaluation icon on my desktop to start it up again. This time when I log in, it's going to ask me to select a username and a password. So I'm going to select my visitor and type in my password, 1234. Click on Start Program. And that gets me into PastPerfect. Now, if I'm coming in as a visitor, I think, oh, you know what, I really want to take a look at the financial records for this organization. I go to click on Pledges and Receipts, and whammo, I get a message that says this function is restricted by PastPerfect Security. So when we put the check at the top of the column in Pledges and Receipts, it locks us out from even being able to get into that section of the program. But we didn't put the check mark in the top column of something like Objects. So when I go into the Objects catalog, you'll see I can see records in here, and I can move around from one record to the next. But the things I can't do are things like add or edit. All right? So that's how PastPerfect Security is stopping people from getting into those areas. I'm going to go ahead and exit back out of the Objects catalog. I can't get into Setup, so I can't set my own security settings. And I can't get into Utilities either. Clicking on those guys, and nothing is happening. Amy asks a great question. Is there a way to switch users without having to close the program and start again? Amy, there's not. If you're going to log into PastPerfect, the only way to do it is to close out of PastPerfect and open it again. There's no log out, log in. If we created that, it would do the same thing as closing the program and opening it up again. All right, so we've gone in and we've set up security for the visitor. Now I want to go in and add myself and Roberta Hope to the membership team. That would be group number 7. So if we take a look back here at our PDF, here's group number 7, myself and Roberta, and our goal is to access to view the collections, but no access to add or edit information in the collections. Obviously, we work for the membership team, so we're going to have all sorts of access in membership and fundraising, but we're not going to have complete access in the collections area. So I'm going to go back into PastPerfect, exit all the way back out, and get back to my desktop so I can start it up. All right, so I'm going to select Rick, who's the administrator, and type in his password, which again is master. Click on Start Program. And once I'm in the program here as the administrator, I can go into Setup and Security. Now, last time we went into security, it did not prompt us for this check. It only prompts us for this when we have security activated. When security is activated, if you walk away from your computer and someone else says, oh, they have administrative privileges, let me go in there and change my own privileges, they're still going to get stopped by this message. So this security check here is just to make sure the person who logged on is the same person who is trying to access security area now. So I'm in now as Rick into the security. Again, we're at the administrator level. I'm going to move my way down to group number 7, which is the membership level, and I'm going to add and display group members. So if I go into add user and type in my name, not my name this time, but there's Roberta. I'll give her the password 1234 as well. Remember, your administrator sets up these passwords, then has the ability to see them all. That's why you need to designate someone as an administrator. Users do not administer their own passwords. A little different than a lot of Microsoft programs, but required for PastPerfect. So I clicked on Add here. I'm going to add another user, Gomez, Brian. Put in the same password. Now you can have multiple usernames use the same password, but you cannot have the same username used multiple times. You can't have a Brian Gomez in one group and a Brian Gomez in another. There's no way to verify which one we're trying to get in as. So you have to have 2 different names if you do have the person. If you have 2 John Smiths working for you, you need to use a middle initial or some other way to designate John. All right, so I've added my 2 people here. I'm going to exit out. And again, I want to allow my membership team into PastPerfect to do things like see the objects, but not add, edit, delete, or print. So a lot of the same things that we were doing for the visitor. I'm not going to go through each one of these again, except to say that under Setup, I think, no, sorry, General. Under General, there's a button here to display values. Displaying values and displaying locations are a couple of the choices here under General that you can set to stop things like appraisal value or current value or purchase price, to stop those things from displaying on the screen. So I'm going to go put check marks in those guys. Also not able to change ID numbers. I don't want my membership people changing my contact ID numbers and messing up my catalogs. All right. So under catalogs, I go through here, put my check marks in to stop them from being able to add, edit, delete, or print. My membership team are also staff members of the organization, and maybe we want them to be able to see where stuff is stored so they can help with inventory or something like that. Now, security is still activated, so we don't have to reactivate security. You can see right now we're logged in as Rick Hilton. That's the name right here in the top center of the screen. So in order to log back in as, let's say, Roberta, we need to close out of PastPerfect and do it again. So I'm going to close all the way out of PastPerfect, and then from the main menu, start up. John asked a great question. If you activate security for one group, does it activate it for all groups? Yes. Once you activate security, this screen is going to come up on everyone's computer when they next log in to PastPerfect. So Roberta Hope, 1, 2, 3, 4, start the program. We're now in as Roberta, and I have full access in the contacts database. I can add, edit, delete, print, do whatever I want in here. But if I go out and go back into objects, I don't have the ability to add, edit, delete. All right. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is moving someone from one group to another. If I want to move, if someone's going to move from the membership team over to the curators team, how do we do that? If I go to setup, now I didn't lock this group out of security, so right now the membership team has the ability to change their own security settings. This is one of the screw-ups that I actually shouldn't have done here on screen, but it'll make things go a little bit faster. I'm logging in to security now to make changes. I don't have to be the administrator if I don't lock all of the other groups out of security under setup with this little red security choice. Okay. So here's the membership group. If I want to change what group, let's say Roberta is in, I can double-click on Roberta and then just change her number to the group we're talking about. So Roberta's moving from the membership group over to the curators group. So I'm just going to change that to a number 2 and then save and exit. If I'm only seeing the group that I'm looking at, I click here to display all to see all of the people that we have in PastPerfect, all of the people who are in each of the groups. And you'll see their groups listed there. And Roberta's now in group 2. Okay. I'm going to exit all the way back out. And this time we'll come in and we'll be Roberta. All right, so now we're logged in as Roberta, and we didn't do a whole lot of restrictions for the curators group, so they can still get in here to contacts and do a lot of the other things. This is the basics of setting up security. Now, your organization, with your people, you're going to have different choices that you're making than the next organization down the street. Many organizations, they would benefit just by turning on security so they would know who last edited a record. If I take a look at objects, down here at the bottom where it says updated by unknown, that's because security is not enabled. If security is enabled, when someone makes a change to a catalog record, it will put in who's ever logged in under security here. So you can keep track of what changes were made by who. if for no other reason, it's a great reason to activate security. Even if everybody still has administrative privileges, activate security and make them log in so we can track who's making the changes. Sometimes we want to try to restrict how people are doing data entry. We may want them to only be adding things based on an authority file. And I'll give you a warning right up front. You can make people pretty angry by restricting how they do data entry, especially if your authority files are not complete. So if we go into objects, for instance, and I click on location here, and I think, oh, this is in geology case number 5, not geology case number 1, I can go to edit, change this to be number 5, and then hit save. So it's asking me if I want to save this home location to the history. I'm going to say yes. That's not the point of what I'm going for here. But we were able to go in here and make a simple change in PastPerfect. Now, because we didn't have authority file verification, I'm going to go in here and show you what's in that authority file. So I'm going to right-click, and you'll see we don't have a geology case number 5. And because we don't have a geology case number 5, if I turn on this restriction, the user would not be able to save that change since that was not in the authority file. Let me see if I can demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So this is the Curators Group. I'm going to go in under Security. And as the curator, I'm going to go into the General Information, and I'm going to set it for authority file notification. Notification is the lesser of the two here. I guess none is the we're not going to check your authority file at all. Notification is going to look in the authority file, and if your data entry matches what's in the authority file, nothing's going to happen. If it doesn't, it's going to say, hey, you may want to think about using the authority file. It'll still allow you to save it if it's not in the authority file, but restriction won't allow you to save those changes. I'll show you that after we get through this one. So I'm going to go ahead and close out. I'm still in as the curator in the Curator Group, so I think this is going to work. We'll give it a try. I go to Objects, and that same record where we changed the location to geology case number 5, if I click on Edit, I'm not even going to make a change. I click on Save, not seeing it. Funny, we did this in practice, too, and we saw the same sort of effect, that we needed to exit all the way out of PastPerfect first. I'm also missing another piece I need to show you, so pretty good we saw this. All right, so I'm going back into Objects, and let's try it one more time. Location 5, Edit. There we go. So when I hit on Edit and tried to save the record, it's looking at all of the fields that have authority files and checking my data entry against those authority files. So for instance, site, other name, and building are also not kept in the authority file with those terms in there. So with notification, I have these two buttons at the bottom. I have Save As Is, or Save As Is and add unauthorized entries to the authority file so that I won't get this message in the future. If I click on Save As Is, I can move on. Now, if I set that to restriction, the only button that would have been available to me is Cancel, which if I was trying to do a lot of data entry in a day and I had to fight against that all day long, would drive me absolutely mad. We put this in here because clients were asking for it, but I think in actual practice, very few clients use it because they do find it sort of frustrating. I like the idea of notification. I don't like the idea of restriction. My 2 cents. All right. So that's one half of the notification restriction stuff. Now, you can set it up that not all authority files are being checked, but just some are, and that's under Setup and Authority Files. Under Setup and Authority Files, you'll see a list of all of the different authority files and then a verified check mark next to them. So if the check mark is in there and you have security settings enabled, it will either notify you, restrict you, or none, depending on what those settings are set for under security. So if, yeah, I do want to make sure that people are very consistent with my home location and those things, but I don't want them to have to worry about filling in from the authority file on these other fields, then you would do something like this. All right. So that is making people use the authority files or encouraging them to use the authority files. One last thing before I start taking questions here, or two last things actually. In order to know what settings are in PastPerfect Security, you can go to Reports, System. Once you're in the System section, there is a Security Setting report. And when you run that report, I'm going to preview it here on the screen for you, you can see what the group name is, who is part of the group, and what restrictions that they have set. So you can see here down under Visitor, we have this visitor, and it spills over to page 2 with lots and lots of restrictions that we put in there. All right? So you can print out a list at the end to see if you have everyone's name in there and what their restrictions are. And then my advice to you is after you've set up these settings, you want to go in as the different users whose restrictions you've supposedly set and try to do the actions that you hope the user cannot do. The best way to know if security is on and working the way you need it to work is to go in and test as that user. And since the administrator is the one that administers the passwords, they should have no trouble getting in to do that kind of testing. Now, if you find that you have set up security and you have locked yourself out from security, please contact the support office. We can help you get back into the software with a time-coded password that will only work at the time you call us. It will help you get in so you can make the changes to get your security set up appropriately. Do not uninstall and reinstall the software hoping that that's going to fix the problem. It will fix the problem, but you won't have any data. So you'll lose all of your good, valuable data, but your security will work again, which then defeats the purpose of having security, I guess. So in any case, that's setting up security and changing your security settings. I've got a lot of questions here I'm going to go through verbally. If you have to leave us to go have lunch or whatever time it is in your part of the world, thanks for coming. Remember that feedback will be coming to you as you close the webinar, or you can send me an email, brian@museumsoftware.com, and give me your feedback. I really appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to start working through the questions now.